All right, let's get into this. I want you to imagine a detective agency, but one that doesn't deal with your typical crimes. No, they investigate tears in the fabric of reality itself. And today, we're cracking open one of their strangest case files yet, the case of the missing shadow.
So, the case kicks off when a woman named Helena Murteira walks through the door. She's surprisingly calm, like she's already gone through the whole panic phase and landed somewhere else. She needs a detective, for sure, but not for any reason you'd ever guess.
Now, these detectives, they're used to some pretty weird stuff. I'm talking reflections that show up a half-second too late, echoes in soundproof rooms, that kind of thing. But this was on a whole other level. Helena hadn't lost her keys, she hadn't lost her memory, it wasn't a missing person, and boom, there it is. She just says it, plain as day, like she's reporting the weather. She's standing there in a patch of sunlight, and where her shadow should be, there's nothing. Just bright floor. A crime that shouldn't even be possible has just walked into their office. This is exactly the kind of thing that heteronym detective agency lives for. They're specialists in what they call ontological disturbance, which is just a fancy way of saying, when the fundamental rules of being just break. And for a mystery this bizarre, you don't just need one detective. Oh no, you're going to need 4.
So who are these investigators? Well, here's where it gets really interesting. They aren't just work buddies. They're 4 totally distinct personalities, or heteronyms, all operating out of a single mind. And each one has a completely unique way of seeing the world. First up, you've got Alberto Caeiro. Think of him as the ultimate observer. He has this method of, radical observation. He doesn't guess, he doesn't read between the lines, he just records what is physically, undeniably there. His question is always the same: what are the plain facts? Then you have Álvaro de Campos. This guy is pure energy, all momentum. He sees the world as this web of forces and connections and trajectories. He doesn't just see a thing sitting there. He sees where it's going, what it's becoming. He's always asking, where is this heading? And then there's Ricardo Reis. He's the classical formalist. To him, every case is a story, a text that needs to be documented with a certain weight, a certain literary precision. He's the one who gives messy events a kind of timeless form, always asking, what's the proper way to record this?
And last, but definitely not least, is Fernando Pessoa. He's really the soul of the whole operation. While the other 3 are looking out at the world, Pessoa is looking inward. He feels the emotional and philosophical weight of the case, and he's always wrestling with that one huge question: what does this mean for the self?
So you've got 4 detectives, right? That means you get 4 totally different ways of seeing. And that means you get 4 totally different kinds of clues. All right, let's see what they dug up.
Caeiro goes to Helena's apartment, and his notes are exactly what you'd expect. Super stark. Woman, chair, sunlight, no shadow. But then he sees something else. The floor where the shadow should be, it's too bright. And here's the kicker. He notes that her apartment, her whole vibe, has no pretense. It's like the woman who lives here has finished performing.
Okay, now get this. D. Pampos, our futurist, he follows this thread of absence. He goes out into the old Alfama district of Lisbon, and he finds something incredible. Helena isn't the only one. He finds 53 other people living without their shadows. This isn't just a one-off thing. It's a full-blown phenomenon.
Meanwhile, Reis is doing what he does best. He's turning the whole thing into literature. He actually writes an ode about it. But he doesn't mourn the shadow. Instead, he completely reframes it. He sees it as this liberation. The ground isn't covered anymore. It's now receiving the undivided light. For him, the loss is actually a gain.
And this is where Pessoa just blows the case wide open. He takes one look at what's happening to Helena and immediately turns the investigation back on himself. He sees her becoming this one whole person, and he starts to wonder about his own multiple selves. What if his other detectives are his shadow? Just a more complicated way of carrying the parts of himself he can't deal with all at once.
So, what does it all mean? You put all these clues together: Caeiro's lack of pretense, De Campos' community of shadowless people, Reis' idea of gaining light, and Pessoa's deep dive into the self, and suddenly, the secret of the shadow starts to come into focus.
It turns out the shadow isn't just about light and physics. It's a psychological container. It's literally the shape of all the things we hide, all the roles we perform, the parts of ourselves we don't want to show the world.
It's the dark companion that carries all that stuff for us. Or as Pessoa might say, it's the last unspoken heteronym we all have.
So, how does a person lose their shadow? Well, from talking to all 53 of them, De Campos figured out there's a process. First, you just stop pretending. You stop translating yourself into different versions for different people. You become, as they put it, sufficient. You are enough just as you are. And at that point, the shadow, well, it becomes redundant. It literally has nothing left to do.
And that brings us to the real solution to this whole mystery. This was never a case about an impossible theft or some supernatural event. No, the entire investigation, it was a case for authenticity. Helena really nails it in her second interview. Turns out she was a professional translator, but she said her real lifelong job was translating herself into the daughter her parents wanted, the colleague her boss needed. You get the idea. The moment she stopped doing that, the moment she decided to just be the original version of herself, the shadow, her very last translation, just walked away. So the final twist is that there was no crime at all. The real crime, the fundamental disturbance in reality, was the idea that we needed a shadow in the first place. The belief that we have to hide parts of ourselves just to get by. Losing your shadow isn't a loss, it's a kind of radical liberation. Which of course leaves us with one last question. And this one isn't for the detectives in Lisbon, it's for you. If your shadow is the shape of everything you're hiding, the quiet companion carrying all the things you don't say out loud, what does your shadow carry?